Hello everyone, in this week's episode we are in none other than Italy, and to kick things off we're shooting rooms with high ceilings. Let's do this. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is James Kerwin and this is me. I'm an architecture and interior photographer from the UK, and I love shooting abandoned places, relics, ruins, hidden gems and ghost towns, as well as off the beaten path locations all around the world. I'm posting new videos every Sunday and until the end of March 22, every Wednesday as well. So why don't you join me for the ride by subscribing, and you can also check out my website in the description below. So in this video we're looking at shooting interiors with high ceilings. Sometimes of course these can be difficult to reach, and I have a slight advantage reaching these, as you're going to see. But stick around to the end and I'll give you tips and ideas to shoot this type of space with other lens types as well. Unfortunately for these jobs there's only one tool that I can really use and recommend, and that is unfortunately a tilt shift lens. If you haven't got one, maybe try and look for one of the cheaper ones that's lower end of the budget. But the unfortunate thing is to reach these high ceilings and give you the best composition, you do need to kind of like push the lens up, shift it to the top to be able to capture everything in the scene and give you much more chance for better composition. So yeah, tip number one unfortunately is using a tilt shift lens. Here you can see where I've lifted the lens to get the ceiling into frame. This can help us to even our photograph out. With the ceiling in the frame, it complements and gives a more aesthetically pleasing result. Okay, so tip number two is to use the lines that are on the floor to actually position everything in the camera frame. So keep shifting the lens top to middle to bottom to kind of look around, look at your corners, check your lines and make sure that everything's nice and straight in the frame. It's quite difficult to do. If you slow down, that's the best tip I can give it, and kind of make sure that everything's lined up nice and straight and make sure that everything is kind of in frame as you want it. So here I'm using the edge of the camera to line everything up, using the edges of the screen as a guide. This means using live view and slowing down of course, then checking everything against the hard edge as you see here. Okay, so tip number three is a quite simple one really. It's imagining your final shot. I'm making this as a panoramic, top, middle and bottom. And in my head what I'm actually doing is imagining the final cropped version of the shot, making sure it is finished. So top, middle and bottom, and I'm using this section here with less of the dead space on the foreground in the floor of the bottom shot going to be used in the final result. Yeah, so tip number three is to visualize your final shot. Tip number four, there's some horrible light here coming in this side window for me. So what I did was went over to it, closed the shutters, made there less light so it gave it a more even composition. Of course, light could add to your composition, it could add to the frame overall and give you something unique, but in this case, it's quite harsh, midday sun blasting into the room, and as you can see in parts of the frame behind me, it kind of gives spots all over the wall. So I closed the shutters, it gave me a much better shot behind. Tip number five, and that is to make sure that you're shooting the right direction. And what I mean by that is I could be shooting here towards this camera for this room, and it's beautiful, it looks nice, but there's less detail on the wall, there's less things, there's less bits of kind of fabric hanging, there's less kind of like pictures on the wall, and also the light this way has got the spots that I mentioned in the previous tip. Shooting this way, however, the camera's positioned now, we've got a much clearer shot. We've got the little doors at the back there that kind of give a nice little kind of view, and it gives you a kind of perspective of, oh, what's behind the door, that kind of like alluring feel to it. Either way we look, the ceiling of course is beautiful, but in this side we do have a darker framing and we have less light. We do also have a coving in the corner that's been painted, which kind of looks unusual, I suppose. So in my photograph I decided to point to the building south. I used a few of these first tips to get a panoramic image, and I used a portrait orientation. You can see my tilt shift series linked above if you're interested in the technicals of using one of these lenses. However, it was 3 shots, top, middle and bottom, Bottom are cropped off in the final version of this shot to keep the focus up high and keep your viewer's eye drawn in to what is important. I've spoken about geared heads on this channel before, of course, and you can check out my comparison video on the link above. Geared heads in architecture photography essentially make your life easier. They allow geared precision movements across all three axes of your composition. It's a slower way of working, but if you want to clean up your work, make neater frames and compositions, then perhaps this is the piece of kit for you. I'm not saying that you can't use a wide-angle lens, I'm just saying that a tilt shift can assist you greatly with these higher ceilings. However, they're expensive of course, and they're not obtainable for everyone. So how can you use a normal wide-angle lens to shoot a ceiling like this? For one, get high. Perhaps put your tripod onto bricks or something around you that you're able to reach as high as you can. This might mean that you have to stand on something to actually then take your shot. So on a recent trip I managed to acquire this step ladder in this mansion, and that meant a sort of delicate positioning act to get my tripod on top of it and lift us up. But the idea here is that you're lifting yourself up as high as you can, meaning you get more of the ceiling in that final result. Of course this one wasn't ideal, a unit or something would have been much better and probably less dangerous as well. Number two, don't be afraid to crop your final image to get the result you want. This is fine, especially if you're not going to print your work. Cropping the image can keep the focus of the viewer's eye on the section of the image you want them to see. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by purchasing one of the books listed in the description below, and keep a lookout for the downloadable courses that I have coming out later this year. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that episode, something a little bit different. I've been in Italy for about 10 days in total, shooting all kinds of gems, stuff that I've been wanting to do for a few years, things that are kind of fairly new on the agenda as well. Looking for certain types of rooms with different colours, and this one was a particularly great example. I hope you enjoyed it. As usual, if you've got any comments, please leave them in the section below, and subscribe, hit the bell notification, you'll be alerted next time I upload a video. I hope you're well, stay safe, see you all very, very soon. Bye for now. Next up on Wednesday, we look at marking your progress in photography. See you then.